At 30 years old, Marcus sat in a parking lot. Engine off. Lights off. Phone dead. He had just walked out of another job interview. Another rejection. Another polite smile from a stranger behind a desk who would never call him back. 30 years old. No degree. No savings. No title. Nothing to show for 3 decades of trying. Outside, people walked past with purpose. Briefcases. Coffee cups. Somewhere important to be. Marcus had nowhere to be. He leaned his head against the steering wheel and said out loud, to no one, maybe they were right about me. And right there, in that quiet parking lot, he made a decision. Not to quit. To finally begin. This is Unstoppable Stories, and today you'll discover how one man turned 30 years of failure into the foundation of something extraordinary. Marcus grew up in a small house at the end of a dead-end street. His mother worked 2 jobs. His father left before Marcus was old enough to remember his face. There were no mentors, no connections, no one in his family who had ever gone to college. What Marcus did have was curiosity. As a boy, he'd take apart old radios, trying to understand how they worked. He'd sketch blueprints of machines he'd never build. He'd stay up past midnight reading library books about inventors, engineers, and scientists. But in school, curiosity didn't count for much. He struggled with tests. He misread questions. He rushed. Blank. Teachers handed back papers with red ink and no encouragement. By middle school, a teacher told his mother, "Marcus just isn't built for academics." His mother nodded and said nothing. Marcus overheard everything. That sentence followed him for years, through high school, through failed attempts at community college, through job after job where he never quite fit. Retail, warehouses, data entry, construction. Each one felt like a waiting room, waiting for something he couldn't name. His relatives had opinions. He's 22 and still figuring it out. He's 25 and still jumping around. He's 28. What does he do? He worked. He searched. He tried. But the gap between who he felt he was inside and who the world said he was kept growing wider. When Marcus was 29, he decided to bet everything on one chance. He took out a small personal loan and enrolled in a 6-month coding boot camp. He'd taught himself a few basics online. He believed this was finally it, the door he'd been looking for. He worked harder than anyone in that class. Night shifts, then class in the morning. 4 hours of sleep, cold coffee, and cramped shoulders. He finished every project. He asked every question. At the end of the program, the school held a hiring fair. Recruiters came from tech companies across the city. Marcus prepared for weeks. The day arrived. He shook hands. He smiled. He sat across from 7 different recruiters. All 7 passed. Some didn't reply. Some sent a form email. "We've decided to move forward with other candidates." One recruiter, in a moment of honesty, Marcus never forgot, said, "You're passionate, but your portfolio isn't strong enough. And frankly, at your age, you're competing against 22-year-olds with 40-year degrees. It's a tough sell." Marcus thanked him. He walked to his car. He sat in silence. 30 years old. Every door closed. Every attempt exhausted. Every voice from every year of his life seemed to rise at once. "Maybe they were right about you, Woolday Kit." He sat in that parking lot for 40 minutes. And then something shifted. Not inspiration. Not a sudden vision. Not a movie moment with swelling music. Just a kid's stubborn thought. "I'm not done." He didn't know what came next. He didn't have a plan. But he made one promise to himself. No more waiting to feel ready. No more waiting for permission. No more measuring his worth by other people's timelines. Edrovum. He opened his laptop, and he started building. Not to impress a recruiter. Not to pass a test. Just to create something. Something his. He'd always been obsessed with tools. Physical tools. Carpentry. Mechanics. Fabrication. And he'd noticed, over years of using apps and software, that none of the tools made for tradespeople, plumbers, welders, electricians actually worked the way tradespeople thought. So he decided to build one that did. He didn't know if it would work. He didn't know if anyone would care. But for the first time in his life, Marcus stopped asking for permission to try. What followed was not a montage. It was 18 months of ordinary mornings. Wake up at 5 a.m. Write code until 8. Go to work a warehouse job, loading shelves. Come home. Write more code, watch tutorials, break things, fix things, break them again. He joined online communities. He asked beginner questions and got ignored. He asked better questions and got small answers. He built a rough version of his app. He showed it to 3 electricians from his neighborhood. 2 of them said, "It's confusing." One of them said, "This one feature, this part's right here. I'd actually use that every day." Marcus deleted the confusing parts. He built around that one feature. He showed it to 10 more tradespeople. Then 20. He started a free beta. 60 users. Then 200. No viral moment. No famous investor. Just word of mouth in forums, job sites, and trade Facebook groups. He kept his warehouse job for 14 more months. He kept building at 5 a.m. Some nights, he questioned everything. Some weeks he made no progress at all. There were bugs he couldn't fix, features he couldn't afford. Moments where the whole thing felt fragile, foolish, like something only a failure would believe in. And this is exactly why stories like these are shared here on Unstoppable Stories. Because the moments that look like nothing from the outside are often where everything is quietly becoming possible. Month 16. Marcus got an email from a small contractor in Ohio. "I showed your app to my whole crew. We've been using it for 3 weeks. It's the only scheduling and parts tracking tool that actually makes sense for how we work. Are you the developer?" Marcus stared at that email for a long time. Then he replied, "Yes. That's me." The contractor asked if he offered business licenses. Marcus didn't. He built one that night. By month 18, he had 42 paying business accounts. Not millions, not fame. Just 42 businesses. Real people. Real crews. Paying monthly for something he made alone. At 5 a.m. in a small apartment. While the world thought he was just a warehouse worker going nowhere. The version of Marcus who sat in that parking lot at 30 would not have recognized this. Not because of the money, which was real, but modest. But because of what was gone. The weight was gone. That voice, maybe they were right about you, had gone quiet. Not because the world finally validated him. Because he had stopped needing it too. 2 years after that parking lot moment, Marcus left the warehouse. His app, which he named TradeFlow, had grown to over 400 business accounts across 11 states. He hired his first contractor to help with customer support. He spoke at a small entrepreneurship event in his city. After his talk, a man in his 50s came up to him. "How old were you when you started?" Marcus said. 30. The man shook his head slowly, not in pity, and something closer to relief. "I'm 43, the man said. "I always thought I waited too long." Marcus looked at him. "You haven't." That conversation, Marcus has said, meant more to him than any revenue milestone. His mother came to his apartment one evening and saw the setup: 2 monitors, spreadsheets, user feedback tabs, a whiteboard covered in ideas. She was quiet for a moment. Tense aside, "I always knew you were building something. I just couldn't see it yet." Neither could Marcus, until he stopped letting other people's vision be the only one that counted. Here's what this story doesn't promise. That 30 is a magic number. That apps always work. That effort always leads to the outcome you planned. Marcus got lucky in some ways. The right niche, the right timing, the right early users who believed in his tool. Other people worked just as hard and faced different results. What this story does show is something less glamorous and more important. That staying in motion, imperfect, unsure, unglamorous motion changes what's possible. Not every story ends with 400 clients. Some end with 40, some a wheat 4. Some with a skill developed, a confidence rebuilt, a direction finally found. The shape of success is different for everyone. The decision to keep going looks the same. Marcus was called a failure for 30 years. By teachers, by relatives, by systems that measure people in test scores and credentials and titles. And for a long time, he believed them. That's the part nobody talks about. Not just that the world doubted him, but that he doubted him. That he carried their verdict inside himself like it was his own. The turning point wasn't a breakthrough. It was a refusal. A refusal to let someone else's assessment of his past determine the direction of his future. Failure is not the end. It is, often, the beginning, dressed in the worst possible disguise. Your age is not your expiration date. Your resume is not your ceiling. And the voice that says, maybe they were right about you, that voice has been wrong before. This is Unstoppable Stories. Because every great story begins the moment someone decides the last chapter hasn't been written yet. What part of Marcus's story hit you the hardest? Have you ever heard a voice from someone else? Or from inside that told you it was too late? Tell me in the comments. Primera rea de them. And if this story reminded you that your journey isn't over, subscribe to Unstoppable Stories for more real, powerful journeys of resilience, courage, and transformation. The next story might be exactly what you need to hear.